Okay, what's up, YouTube? I haven't made a video like this in a long time, and yeah, I guess I just wanted to explain why and just share a couple of things about my experience. Um, so yeah, basically, why I started making videos like the first day that I really felt like this awakening process within me, sort of like an awakening process within me was happening, and I just woke up and I just knew something's different today. I just knew something was different, so I just went outside. I went for a walk, and that's when I just decided to just share my thoughts. And suddenly I was no longer shy, camera shy. I felt this urge to make videos was it came from a sense of urgency. Like, I could not ignore this. I could not deny it. It was something that I felt like I had to do because I had so much. I had so many insights, so many epiphanies, so much information just being downloaded into my brain. Um, and yeah, like that whole period, I don't know how long it lasted, maybe a week or 2 weeks. To be honest, I don't really know. I don't really remember, but I experienced the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And the highest of highs, basically what it felt like every time I explain it to someone, I explain it like this. Like, the feeling of coming home after a long journey, but you're not coming home to a house. You're coming home inside of your own body, inside of yourself, inside of your vessel. And it also felt like, imagine if your whole life you were just stumbling through a dark room. Your whole life, you spent your whole life in the dark, and suddenly someone turns on the light. I guess that's why they call it enlightenment, and I totally get it. If you live in that state, it's crazy, man. It's really beyond words. And like, one of the physical symptoms that I felt when I was going through this awakening, like the Kundalini awakening, I felt this Kundalini energy inside of my body. I literally felt like certain knots in my body, and I had to breathe and reposition my body and in certain ways. And it was almost like there's these pathways in your body, and they can light up whenever you breathe in a certain way, whenever you change your posture in a certain way. Like, even right now, it's like I kind of know how to position myself in order to do something. Right now it's not as clear as as it was back then, because back then it was so intense. Like, there were moments where I couldn't even breathe normally or walk. I was just walking down the street and was I was really trying to act normal, but this energy was so intense, and I felt like it was cleansing me. Like, suddenly I had no desire at all for unhealthy foods. Like, one time I even tested it. Like, I bought a packet of cookies, and usually if I buy snacks, I cannot, like, I really lack self-control. But when this Kundalini was active in my system, like, I had zero desire at all to eat sugar or anything like that. And yeah, basically, like, it was like that for a couple of days. Like I knew exactly what I had to do, and I was like inspired. I had infinite energy. I felt good, you know. But there were certain moments that were pretty crazy. Um, One moment was like, I think it lasted maybe like 5 minutes. Um, I was just in my room, and suddenly I felt this level of clarity. I felt this level of expansion that I've never felt before. But then again, it felt so familiar, but it felt so grand, and it felt so expansive. It felt so huge, and what I experienced was like, I think my ego just sort of like dropped, and like I was still in my body. I could still just move around, but the level of awareness I had was so, I can't even put it into words, but I just started laughing because it felt like it was always there, but I I could just never see it. Every now and then I would have like a glimpse of it, but during that moment it was just there. It was here. And to me personally, I think that's what people mean when they say I met God, I experienced non-dual consciousness, um stuff like that. And and what was also crazy was like, there was even like a moment where I sort of like, I got the impression that, you know how reality is like, basically we're behind a veil, and I felt like the veil sort of like got lifted, but there was still like another veil, and it felt like I heard, this is how I describe it, but it's just like some abstract thing, I guess, but it almost felt like I heard like my spirit guides or my ancestors or like just spiritual beings sort of like clapping and cheering for me. They were sort of like celebrating for me in that moment when I had this huge moment of non-dual consciousness or whatever. It was just like my ego was dropped, and I was in tune with something so vast and so infinite, and I knew what it was because I've always enjoyed reading about consciousness and stuff, but I never really experienced it to this magnitude. But yeah, that was one of those experiences. And then like another experience was like, you know how I just like explained like about those energy blockages inside of my body and stuff, and how like this Kundalini energy would sort of like move through these blockages. And there was this one moment where I was in my room again, and I felt this energy come up, and I knew that this was something big, because like I had these waves of this energy surging, and like at some moments it was like I had to breathe, and I had to like push and change my posture, and then I could feel like my energy was circulating again. But this time I felt like it was trying to go straight up. It was trying to go through my head. And it was like, oh shit. So I was literally on my floor. I was like on my knees. I was breathing. I was working through the tension, and I felt it rise. And then when it was like in my head, I felt like, oh shit. And it's crazy because it literally feels like an orgasm, but like, except it being like in your root chakra, it's literally in your crown chakra. And I was just like breathing and sort of like pushing, and then suddenly like I felt like this energy go straight up. I felt it go straight up, and I had this feeling came over me like it's complete, like it's done. And then I went on the roof, um, and yeah, I just went on the roof. I looked at the sky, and again, this sense of oneness, this sense of unity, this sense of I am presence, this sense of expanded, vast consciousness was so intense. It the feeling is it was almost like ending credits rolling after like a movie, and it's like everything that happened before this was sort of like me being lost in a play, sort of like acting in a movie, and I was kind of like forgetting that I was acting in a movie, and I was identified with the character that I was playing, and then suddenly like this awakening happened, and it was like it was all a game all along. And when I was on the roof, like like damn, like I can't even explain it. I can't even put it into words, but like I was looking at a star which happened to be Venus, and I felt just like information coming from that star into my brain, into my psyche, you know? And there was also like there were these beams of light in the distance. I have no idea from where it came, but it felt familiar because as a child I had this vision, this fantasy of like I would always wonder like what if people would just have like this beam of light, and that this beam of light would just go straight up into infinity and beyond. And it's like I was always kind of like fantasizing about that because like no matter where somebody would be, you would sort of like see them from a distance because they had this beam of light that would just point to where they were at. And that was just a random thought I had as a child, but like during that moment when I was on the roof, I saw these pillars of light, and I was like, what the hell, man? Like the universe is trippy as fuck. It's crazy. Life is really crazy. There are a lot of secrets and a lot of mysteries that are just hidden from us, but it's inside of us. Like this technology is inside of us, and we can unlock it. But yeah, basically that happened, and then during the whole week, like everything was so intense. Like colors were sort of like speaking to me more directly, and symbols were also just like more vivid, more rich. There was meaning in everything. And like even like I just had to open up the Bible and read two sentences, and it was just trigger like an epiphany inside of my head, and I was like, what the hell, this makes so much sense. Like for example, like that one verse in the Bible where Jesus says, I am in the Father and the Father is inside of me. That I knew what it was because I experienced that. Like the meaning behind that is basically what Jesus said was like, I'm inside of the universe and the universe is inside of me. I'm inside this infinite consciousness and this infinite consciousness is inside of me. And yeah, when I read that, it just makes so much sense. And then, you know, just a lot of stuff. And then those were the highs. And then there was a low. I'm not gonna go into the details because it was pretty low, but I don't know the exact terminology, but I vaguely remember reading something about like in like this Kundalini awakening process, like at the last chakra, that is like where you sort of like go through a process of dying. Basically you basically have to face death and basically die. And but it's just like some sort of like spiritual thing, or something inside of your psyche, your ego basically, that needs to die or something. But yeah, like I went crazy, I lost my mind. But right before and even during me losing my mind, the levels of consciousness and the levels of awareness I had were insane. And like, I cannot stop thinking about it, because you know how I explained in the beginning of this video, like how it feels like coming home into yourself. It feels like your whole life you were in a dark room and someone just turns on the light. That's what it feels like. But imagine that feeling increasing, slowly just increasing, and you get more and more clarity, more and more insight into yourself and why you do certain things you do. And basically, yeah, I went crazy and ended up in a hospital. But that's another story. Um yeah, basically after, what I experienced in the hospital was like the most creepy shit I've ever experienced. It literally felt like torture. And that's why I will always, I think my mission in this life is sort of like helping with this reintegration of spirituality into society. Because if I had a shaman I could call and be like, yo, I'm going through something right now and I need your help, I need your guidance, then I probably wouldn't have end up in the hospital, and I probably would have been enlightened by now. No, but that's what it felt like. If in a hospital, it felt like they were just taking away my light. Like, this light was like, it was, I can't even have the words, but basically I was going through some intense spiritual shift, and those doctors, they did not, to them, I was just a crazy person. And no matter what I did, I could not communicate this depth of experience that I was going through. And they were just like tying me up on a bed and just shooting stuff in me, and sort of like, I don't know, it was so cold. It felt so cold and it felt so wrong. It literally felt like they just cut off, or sort of like sabotaged my soul. Like, my soul finally found what it was looking for. It sort of like finally was attached to something, to God, basically. Like, I felt one with God. I felt like I was close to God, the closest to God that I could possibly be. And there in the hospital, I felt like they just cut that away. They just took that away from me. And yeah, since then it's just, I don't know, something, I guess I'm back to normal. And it's just like, yeah, I guess I just have to just continue what I'm doing, just try to meditate more, and just try to be healthy, and just live life. I can't be too attached to what I experienced, I guess. I guess I gotta just let it go. But damn, like, once you experience this shit, it's hard to not think, you just keep thinking about it. And it's just like, damn, like, if I could live in that state of consciousness and be in a state of balance and alignment, and that's why I'm just so fascinated by this whole subject. And I think it's literally my goal in life. Like, I want to dedicate my life to just like expanding my consciousness and just growing and just being able to live at that level where I was. I don't know what the technical term is. I think it's like solar consciousness kind of made sense. Like I watched like that Midnight Gospel episode with Damien Eccles, and he just said something about solar consciousness, and that made a lot of sense. And but then again, like enlightenment, that's what it felt like. It felt like being enlightened, but temporarily, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I just wanted to share some thoughts with people online. Yeah.